What is the worst skill in Super Bomb Survival? Everyone's probably thought about that question at one point, but never really gotten too in depth about it. Most people are already fine with their normal skills, and it doesn't really make sense to dive deep into the other end of the spectrum. But I'm here to change that. We shouldn't just observe these terrible skills, but we should full on embrace them. Let's go over 10 of the worst skills this game has to offer in order of just how atrocious they are. The magic dice just pick a completely random skill every time you activate it. This obviously isn't a very reliable skill, but the thing is, that's the point. When it loses in actual usability, it easily makes up for in fun. Not fun in the sense that you'll be getting many kills or anything, but fun in a chaotic sense. You never know what might come next. Maybe it'll be a rocket, or a stealth mine, or maybe it'll be a self-destruct when you have 10 HP. Unfortunately though, it's all downhill from here. After a few seconds of delay, confusion makes everyone around you unable to use their skill for about 10 seconds. While this sounds okay on paper, what actual benefit do you get from this? Skills like this are only really useful if they inherently deal damage in one way or another, like actually making them lose health or flinging them somewhere. But disabling their skill, while that might be pretty annoying, is not really causing them any damage beyond being a minor inconvenience. And while it is funny to use this to mess with stealth mine users, is it worth it to lose your skill slot just to make other people unable to use theirs? For most people, the answer to that is going to be no. The bubble wand makes you launch a giant bubble directly in front of you, and anyone that it hits gets trapped inside of it. While inside a bubble, players lose all control and they are unaffected by gravity. Though it is funny to laugh at people aimlessly floating around like an idiot, this doesn't provide much actual usefulness beyond being annoying. Much like confusion, skills like this are only really useful if they inherently deal damage. Floating around uncontrollably for a bit is pretty annoying, and in some rare cases you can make them take a bunch of damage. But other than that, pretty much harmless. But to be fair, it's a lot more fun to use than some of the other skills here, so at least you can give it that. I'm gonna be honest, for something claiming to be a downsized nuclear bomb, I can't say I'm terribly impressed with this thing's performance. It spawns high up in the air, like an airstrike, and slowly falls down to the ground, where it explodes and causes a whole bunch of damage. But the thing is, nobody'll be there. And even if there was, they'd still walk away in one piece. Why? Well, first, you have to be both blind and deaf in order to not notice this thing. And since most people that play this game have functioning eyes and ears, that's not a very good start. Even if you think someone's AFK, just drop a mini nuke near them and they'll magically come to life. And secondly, the explosion itself isn't even that powerful. Sure, it's more powerful than most bombs, but it's not by much. It sets off several consecutive explosions instead of just one, but the explosions themselves aren't as deadly as you might think. They deal 20 damage each, and they're actually quite small. Theoretically, it should be able to kill someone instantly if they're somehow hit by all the explosions, but in reality that rarely ends up happening due to the knockback. And all of this is without mentioning the insanely long recharge time of around 40 or 50 seconds. You only get a few chances each game to use your mini nuke, so it's important to make them count. Unfortunately, apart from wreaking havoc with charged sodas, there isn't much of a realistic use for the mini nuke. The banana is quite obviously designed to be a joke skill. It's literally just a banana that makes people trip for a few seconds if they touch it. But if it's in the right hands, the banana can be rather deadly, believe it or not. I'll say this. If you're gonna use the banana, make sure you use the heavyweight perk. It makes it far easier to push things around by walking into them. So you can both push around the banana to force people to trip on it, and then you can push them around once they're down, preferably into some lava or other damage source. It sounds impractical, but it's actually quite simple. Well, it's still impractical. It's the banana after all. Outside of this dumb gimmick, the banana is exactly what it was meant to be, a joke. A good joke, but still a joke. You place a little spring down, and whoever walks over it bounces up into the air. I feel like this is trying to target a middle ground that doesn't really exist. You want to have extra vertical mobility, and you want to help your friends have extra vertical mobility. Let's be honest, no one fits that description. Plus, even if you did, the spring still wouldn't be good. There's better skills you could use for that, like the ice tower or the truss. Although, it is funny when you place two springs on top of each other and they fly up into the heavens. But apart from that, pretty useless. The cold snap in concept is quite simple. After about a 1 second delay, everyone around you is frozen for about 1 second. It's understandable why the freezing duration is this short, given the short delay period, but still, 1 second! Usually the reason you might freeze someone is if they're in a poison cloud or something, so they take a bunch of damage. But people get unfrozen so quickly, it becomes very impractical for that kind of use. However, there are a couple saving graces to the cold snap. One, you can use it how it was actually intended. There was a small period immediately after the cold snap's release, where it froze people for a much longer time. However, it was quickly nerfed to its current state because it was never actually intended for PvP in the first place. The intended way to use the cold snap is to use it for things like extinguishing burning blocks and making platforms over lava. And depending on your playstyle, this might be a perfectly reasonable way to use the cold snap. However, if you are dead set on targeting other people with the cold snap, then you'll be happy to know that cold snap can still freeze bubbles. Freezing a bubble makes you experience gravity like normal again, and if you get lucky, you can freeze someone in a bubble and make them fall into lava. Anyways, while the cold snap may be annoying, it's nothing to worry about at the end of the day. This literally just puts you in a bubble. Am I crazy, or is this just blatantly unhelpful? What do you gain from randomly floating about in a bubble? Although, if you use Unshakable with this, it allows you to actually control where you're going, which admittedly gives you some pretty great mobility. If you plan to use that gimmick to the fullest, or if you just like floating around in bubbles, then go ahead, use this skill. But otherwise, I genuinely have no clue why anyone would ever use this. The super magnet perfectly captures that feeling of, ooh, that's cool. Wait, why would I ever use this? So, what does this skill do? Well, you throw down the magnet, and it automatically pulls any loose objects toward itself. And if any coins, charged sodas, pizza, or anything like that come within this purple sphere around the circle, it'll automatically be given to you. Now here's a challenge. Name one realistic situation where this would be genuinely useful. No, I'm serious. Actually try and think of one. It's hard, isn't it? For most people, the most effective use for the super magnet is for finding any loose change that might have fallen into the lava. But other than that, what is the point of this? The only other use I can possibly think of for the super magnet is when me and my friend did the impossible. We got a kill with the super magnet. See, the super magnet may not attract players, but it does attract bubbles, and bubbles that just so happen to have players in them. Do you see where I'm going with this? The setup was that I threw the magnet into the lava, and then my friend would use the bubble wand to trap our target in a bubble. And lo and behold, it actually worked! Apart from that totally realistic situation, you'll be better off using any other skill than the super magnet. Except for one. But before we look at the number one worst skill in the game, let's take a look at some honorable mentions. The bubble barrier. It's so bad, it's insulting. It's worse than the super magnet. Hell, it's worse than nothing. So, the bubble barrier spawns a big pink sphere that bombs cannot enter. The intended use of this is for you to stand around inside the bubble for safety or something. But the bubble barrier doesn't actually help. It just makes you think that you're safer. Explosions from nearby bombs can still reach into the barrier and damage you like normal, so all this really does is push the bombs a little bit further away from you and not actually protecting you from the explosions themselves. So in a way, the bubble barrier is an actual danger to you since it encourages you to stand still so much and get hit by bombs. But that's not the end of it. It doesn't happen very often, but people using caltrops, ice spikes, or the ice staff can use them to break your bubble barrier, dealing 10 damage to anyone inside. The fact that you can get punished for trying to defend yourself using this just goes to show how awful the bubble barrier really is. While most of the other skills in this list are futile at best, I'm convinced that the bubble barrier is the only skill in the game to be an active detriment. And there you have it, 10 skills you should never ever be using, but you can still try anyways. I mean, it won't work very well, but it'll be interesting alright. In conclusion, there's not much point to using these skills for too long. Unless your dream is to be the server Giga Chad that uses the super magnet, you'll have way more fun using the skills that you're already used to. But all I'm saying is that it's never too late to try something new.